follow me on Twitter, or I might just follow you in real life. This world is a strange one. There are so many crazy, psychotic people out there. These creepy people want to terrify and harm the unsuspecting folks around them. And it's only a matter of time before you'll be targeted. Let's just say that Twitter and other social media sites only make it easier for freaks to find victims. So enjoy these allegedly true, creepy Twitter encounters. But first, 76 amazing people are enjoying shoutouts, bonus episodes, and exclusive merchandise at my Patreon. Think about becoming a patron too to save this channel and unlock plenty of goodies. That's patreon.com/darknessprevails. Also, if you got a school lockdown scary story or a janitor scary story, send it over to us at deathbyfear.com. Thanks. Now, let's check out these creepy Twitter critters. Number 1. He worshipped me. Submitted by Margerita N. I've heard a lot of lonely girls talk about wanting a man to practically worship them, to be obsessed about every aspect of them, to be the center of their thoughts. I can tell you now, I thought I was lucky when it happened to me, but I soon realized that I was nearly in some sort of horror movie. This is the story of what happened when I dated Derek. I didn't even know Derek until a few months back. I was the kind of person who wasn't much of a social butterfly except when I was online. If I was at home, I was looking at my phone. And if my face was planted in my phone, I was checking my Twitter, reading other people's posts, tweeting about my day, and following interesting new people. I even had about 200 followers of my own. All in all, though, I didn't really use the private messaging system much. I really didn't have anyone that I needed to chat with that I couldn't just openly tweet, let alone text. But one day, when I had a notification for a new message, it stuck out like a sore thumb. So of course, I read it right away. The sender's name was Derek. His user profile, if it was of himself, showed a very good-looking man with faint facial hair, a 5 o'clock shadow if you will. So I didn't have any reservations about replying back, even before I read the message itself. His message read, "Did you go to such and such high school?" I replied, "Yes, actually. Did you go there too?" "I don't recognize your name." Only seconds after I sent that reply, he had already messaged me back. "I sure did. Don't recognize this face?" In all honesty, I didn't, and it kind of made me feel bad that I didn't remember someone who obviously remembered me. It was weird though, I was sure I would have remembered a face like that. So I wrote back, "Sorry, I really don't." After which he said, "That's alright, I was pretty forgettable back in the day." I was writing a reply, but before I could finish it, he sent another message, this time a question. This is what it said. "I know this may sound weird, but you wouldn't want to catch a cup of coffee with me sometime, would you? Maybe Friday around noon." He seemed nice, and his profile picture was gorgeous, so it didn't sound weird to me at all. And oddly enough, he had even guessed that I had Fridays off, Fridays and Saturdays to be exact. I erased my halfway done message and replaced it with this. "That's not weird at all, I'm actually free that day, so it sounds like a good idea." We discussed a place to meet at, talked a little more about what classes were my favorite back in school, and what subjects he took in college that he just hated. We had a lot of fun talking that night. Waiting for Friday to come was a bit difficult. I was getting excited about my date with Derek. I'd been single for the past 2 years, and I was hoping that this could blossom into something special. Every time I waited for a message from him, I was afraid he'd mention his significant other, showing me how not single he was. But there was never a sign of it, and besides, he had asked me out, so I was sure I had the all clear. Finally, Friday came. I remember panicking that day, looking for the other shoe to my favorite pair, but it must have been lost in my messy house, so I just threw on what I could. I was afraid I'd look too plain. I beat him to the destination and I waited. I soon learned that his profile pic was basically a lie. because he was insanely better looking than that picture. He was taller than I thought he'd be. He was toned with a great smile. I was smiling before he ever found where I was. We sat down together and completely hit it off in person too. I couldn't have imagined it going any better. Dare I say he was almost the perfect man. Almost. Soon we began getting together every weekend, seeing a movie, going out to eat, taking walks at the park. Then soon enough, we began to see each other nearly every day. We became inseparable. I missed him the moment he would be gone, and I knew he felt the same about me. Honestly, I never saw it coming. The day was quickly approaching when he would invite me to his place, and it did. The timing couldn't have been better. To put it bluntly, I was ready to rock his world. I remembered showing up to his house, a quiet little place in the suburbs. He was unlocking his door, cutely fumbling his keys. The moment he opened that door, I kissed him, letting out all the tension and emotion I'd been feeling for him up to this point. It felt spectacular. We made our clumsy way to his room. The lights were already out, the room lit only by the remaining sunlight outside. I wish I could say I knew before it got too far. But this wasn't some movie. This wasn't some scripted event. We finished doing what we'd been wanting to do to each other for a long time. We lay there cuddling until we both fell asleep. It wasn't until I was the first to wake up that I was trying to find his bathroom. I didn't want him to wake up as he looked to be in a pretty deep sleep. Now, in his room there were two doors, both on the opposite wall of his bed. They were both identical as well, one on one side and one on the other. So I simply picked the nearest one to me, naturally. I opened it and realized it was a closet, but something caught my eye before I closed the door completely. I thought I'd seen something off. So I reopened the door and searched for the closet light to get a better look. What the light revealed was terrifying at the least. There were dozens of pictures of me all over the floor. Basically, a massive collage of me made up the whole floor of the closet. And they weren't pictures we had taken together. These were pictures of me with friends, at work, in my house alone on my cell phone. He appeared to have been standing at my window when he took that picture. There were pieces of gum scattered about the pictures. Chewed gum. The thing is, I was the gum chewer. I always had a pack on me. I used to smoke, and it really helped put off the urges. I've offered a piece to him a few times before, but he always refused it. So I can only assume that he had somehow been picking up all my used pieces of gum when we were together. It was disgusting. The most terrifying thing I saw in that closet, though, was a shoe taped to the middle of this obsession collage. It was the other shoe to the one that I'd been missing before. Derek had been in my house. It was all coming clear. Derek had stolen my shoe. He'd spied on me and known exactly which days I had off. And he didn't go to my high school at all. He had just spied on me and stalked me enough to learn that information. I didn't even put that information on my Facebook or Twitter. When I slowly closed the door, now fearing for my life and afraid to make a sound as to wake up Derek, I tiptoed backward, then turned towards his bed. I had to be sure that he was still sleeping. No, he was now sitting upright in the bed, and he had the biggest smile on his face. What do you think? I told you I meant it when I say that I love you, Margerita, he said to me passionately. His smile never lowered. It was like he thought I'd like that I'd be overjoyed to find his shrine to me. Then he continued as he stood up. I've been making that since before we ever met. I froze there against the closet door. So he really didn't go to my high school. He'd basically just admitted it, that we didn't know each other until he messaged me that night on Twitter. He began to walk towards me. The way we stood in his room, we were both equal distances from his bedroom archway, which luckily for me was doorless. I gathered myself, then bolted toward the opening. I made it through, but I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my wrist. Derek had a hold of me. He pulled me back into his room as I slammed hard into his chest. I was crying. My cheeks were soaked in tears. "Why are you trying to leave? Why are you crying? I thought you loved me. Are you just using me?" He questioned me over and over while slowly gripping onto my wrist harder. Apparently, he completely believed that what he was doing was normal. I wondered, how many other girls had he done this to in the past? I didn't want to know. I thought before I finally spoke. I thought of something that might make him let go. I didn't want to just call him crazy. I said to him, I don't love you. I lied. I thought I did, but the feelings, they're gone." And luckily, I felt his grip lessen on me. The look on his face was a look of heartbreak, and I almost felt sorry for him. But instead, I backed away, moving closer to the bedroom archway, closer to the front door. He didn't follow me this time, so in one quick motion, I turned and ran out of his house, wearing just my shirt and panties. I never pressed charges on Derek, though I could have. But I did get a restraining order, though when I did see him last, he only looked miserable. Again, I felt almost guilty, but he was messed up in his head. He wasn't right. I do believe he loved me like he said he did, that he truly cared. But the way he cared was too much. I'm sorry, Derek. Please get help. And please, let's never meet again. Number 2. Insane Girl on Twitter. Submitted by Greg M. I met the most insane person on Twitter. I may be a 26-year-old grown man, but to be completely honest, this woman freaked me out. It all started when I got this new follower on Twitter. This was big news for a guy that followed maybe 300 people and only had 3 followers of his own, and those were just my brothers. So when I saw the notification, I decided to check out this new follower's info. It was apparently a girl named Masley. It was the strangest name I had ever heard. Who would name their kid Masley? I was hoping it was just some stupid username she'd made up. No sooner than I had clicked away from her Twitter page did I get a new notification, then another new notification, then another. I was getting new notifications faster than I'd ever had before. I wasn't a huge Twitter user, so this was weird for me. I checked them, and they were all from the same girl, this Masley. She was going down my list of old tweets, liking each of them, retweeting them, and replying to each and every one. And they weren't fitting responses. For example, on one tweet about a day of fishing I had, with a picture of a fish that I eventually had to throw back, she wrote, "I can smell you just by looking at this." Then, on a tweet I wrote about my plans for the coming weekend, she replied to it, "What would it take to taste you?" What the heck was wrong with this girl? I'd never done it before, so I decided to Google how to block a Twitter user. As soon as I learned how, I did it. This person was seriously freaking me out. I thought that would be the last of it, but I wouldn't be writing it here if it wasn't. A couple of days later, I got yet another notification. It was a new follower, except it seemed like the exact same account as before. Just as I expected, this new follower began to like and retweet all my tweets again. This time, she replied one simple thing to each of them. It read, "A new account in case you blocked me." Over the course of the next week, I ended up blocking 3 more of her troll accounts, but no matter what I did, she just kept coming, so I just stopped using my Twitter. I even uninstalled the app to stop getting those annoying notifications. She was all day with this stuff. Luckily, I'd never used it that much before anyway. A couple of months go by. I stayed off Twitter, just coming home and watching TV after work or hanging out with a few buds. But eventually, I grew curious, and I finally decided to reinstall the Twitter app to check on my profile. I had over 100 new notifications, and if you didn't already guess it, They were all from Massley. Different accounts of Massley, dozens of them, each declaring on my tweets the same thing as before. A new account in case you blocked me. But the newer ones had their own tweets with my name mentioned and a message typed out. They said, "You shouldn't put your address on Facebook." Those messages were dated about a week ago. The creepiest part were the newest tweets. The most recent tweet of hers, of course, mentioned me, and it read, "I'll be tasting you soon. Hope you see my white car." Attached to that tweet was a picture of my mailbox. Immediately, I reported the crazy girl, if they really were some girl at all. I reported each and every one of those duplicate accounts, and I definitely kept an eye out my window just in case she was serious. Every white vehicle that passed made my heart pound. I was ready to call the police at any minute. I didn't ever meet this girl in person, thank God, and I deleted my account after that. But I know that whoever that was, they were crazy and still out there. This was definitely the creepiest experience of my life. Number 3. It was just a night out. Submitted by Anica P. This story is an experience by my eldest sister. Let's call her Chloe. She was 16 at the time and lived in a bungalow with my father. Me, my brother, and my mother had moved away to another part of the country, and this put a lot of stress on her. Chloe had always been a party child, and without my mother's influence and guidance, she went off the rails. She went out partying, mostly drinking, in the woods and illegal properties like abandoned houses and other buildings. But that would eventually come to a stop after these events took place, and ever since this, she only goes out to local pubs and social clubs with her boyfriend and close friends. In early March of 2016, Chloe got a tweet about an upcoming party, so she went out with her friends. My dad had given up trying to stop her from going to these places. She told me the only rule he gave was, if the police get involved, I don't want to know. She quoted saying that Dad once said, "You're old enough and smart enough to know how to keep out of trouble." But I know for a fact that Chloe is none of those things. She was only 19 at the time. So Chloe went out. She obviously knew a lot of people at the party. They were always the same people anyway. But that night there were some different faces. Being the social butterfly she was, Chloe got started on having a few drinks and introducing herself to everyone. She told me there was this one person in particular who she really got on with. It was a boy named Jay. She told me he was a quiet, nice guy. They had a lot in common, and it sounded like she was about to tell me that she had had a one-night stand with him in her drunk blindness, but that was definitely not the case here. He took her by the hand and pulled her to one side. They kissed apparently, but then she went on to tell me he started acting really weird. He pulled her about, roughly nipping at her neck and collarbone. Chloe obviously wasn't going to take that and pushed him off. That's when she noticed a few red patches on his cheek and lips. She flipped out because he had bitten her so hard that he'd drawn blood. His teeth weren't sharp at all, and it bloody hurt. With a decent scream of "Get the F off of me," a bunch of her friends came over and had Jay by the neck. Chloe, needless to say, went home, but that was not the end of it. She kept seeing Jay around town, but did her best to stay out of his line of sight. He followed her on Twitter. He would even make duplicate accounts to circumvent her blocks. Still though, every time he did, she would block his new ones again and again. But it was quickly growing annoying, and eventually she deleted her own account. She was really getting angry now, so she did some detective work. It turns out Jay thought he was a vampire. He was part of a pretty large vampire group on Twitter and his Facebook. He would brag about his relationships with his victims in tweets and messages, and even talked about Chloe and how it was worth the hits. He got reported. Chloe knew she had to at least talk to her friends and tell them about this creep. I don't believe in vampires. I do believe in people who think they're vampires, though. I hate the fact that some guy could so easily hurt my sister like that. Chloe never said if she'd seen him again or if he'd approached her at any other time, but for his sake, I hope he never goes near her again. So creepy vampire Jay, let's never meet. And that goes the same for your crazy vampire Twitter group too. Number 4. The Virgin Island Stalker. Submitted by Steven. This all started 3 years ago. I was on Miiverse on my Wii U. I was and still am a huge fan of Mario Kart 8. One day I posted something on Miiverse about Mario Kart 8, and someone named Mercade Delight 23 commented on my post. He asked, "Why do you love that crap game?" I respectfully gave my opinion on why I liked it, and then he blocked me on Miiverse. But the same person ended up finding me on Twitter, and he's been pestering me and stalking me ever since. It all started out with him disliking my videos, and then it got worse. He would comment on my tweets with horrendous comments, saying I was gay, insulting my family, including my mother, calling me crude and terrible names, and telling me to go screw my 48-year-old mother. He began to tweet these insults at me on a daily basis, right out in the open, and pretty quickly I'd had enough, so I blocked him. I ended up having to make my account private for some time. After several months, I thought he'd be gone, so I made my Twitter public again. But only a few days later was I being stalked and harassed again. He'd found my YouTube channel and started to insult me, disliking all my videos there. I then noticed that people were saying he was still stalking me on Twitter. He would log out of his account, since he can't see my tweets because I blocked him, so that he'd be able to read all of my tweets, and then he would use them to fuel his little fire. It didn't take long for him to post death threats on my YouTube channel. He even made alternate accounts on Twitter, and he said he'd find me, that it would only take a few seconds to find all of my personal information online. At this point, I was getting scared. This psychopath of a person really wanted to hurt me, and I hadn't done anything to him. Why was he focusing on me so hard? It scared me so bad that I stopped my gaming for a while, and I deleted my Twitter account. These happenings really affected my day-to-day life. I didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel confident in myself. I didn't understand why someone would want to go out of their way to hurt someone's feelings, to put them down about the things they enjoy, to want to send them death threats. At around the same time that I deleted my account on Twitter, someone began knocking on our door and running away. We never saw who it was, but I can't help but wonder that the timing of these stupid pranks were more than a coincidence, or they weren't a coincidence at all. I believe, though, that it's slowly dying down, but I'm still keeping an eye out for myself when I'm in public, and I try to never leave the house alone. It's scary for anyone to have to deal with something like this. If you know anyone that has been affected by a cyberbully, a stalker like this, please speak up and protect them. As you can see from my situation, things can truly escalate in only a matter of days. And number 5, a real stalker. Submitted by Clary. It all started with a party at my friend's house. We were having a really great time. It was my friend's birthday, and he didn't care who he invited to his party. He's a really charismatic guy. Though I love to go to parties myself, I never drink or do drugs, so my friends always count on me to drive them home after having too much fun. After this specific party, one of the guys who was there asked me if I could drop him off at his house. I'm friendly and passive, so I really couldn't say no. He didn't have any money on him to get a taxi, and he was obviously drunk, so I told him to hop in with my other 2 friends. Sometimes I think I was too nice. I was surprised when I found out that he lives very close to me, because I literally know everyone on our street, but I didn't know him apparently. The next day I found out that he followed me on Twitter, and stupidly I followed him right back. That was my worst mistake. After a month or so, I found myself having a crush on him. He was very nice and caring. He was sweet and charming and very, very handsome. So it was only natural. But steadily, over time, he began to act creepy. He began to change from his former self, but maybe this was his true self. He would send me 30 messages in a row if I'm a bit too late to answer him. Like, why are you ignoring me? Why don't you want to talk to me? I thought we were friends. Eventually, I confronted him on his sudden change of character. He said that it was because he fell in love with me. When I read that message, my heart pounded. I instantly forgot about him being so clingy and obsessive. I was so happy. Until he admitted that he's been watching me even before we met. He said that he was collecting data on me, and he moved here just for me, and a bunch of crazy stuff like that. I was so scared. Right away, I blocked him on Twitter, and reluctantly, I told my dad about the situation, just in case he decided to escalate things. 3 days later, he sent me a friend request on Facebook, but I just ignored it. I wasn't in the mood for his nonsense. He then started messaging me saying that he was sorry. He said that he had just had a fight with his best friend, and that he didn't mean to take out his harsh feelings on me. I didn't reply and left the message status on read. After an hour or so, he sent me pictures. Pictures of me everywhere I went. It was the last picture that scared me the most. It was a picture from just outside my bedroom window. I recognized the curtains, and where the curtains slightly parted, I could even make out myself sleeping. I felt tears run down my face, and my blood seemed to run cold at the sight of that picture. This guy wasn't normal. I got my phone and called my dad, and he called the police. Eventually, we got a restraining order worked out, but I still didn't feel safe. After 3 weeks, I thought that everything was over. But all in all, a restraining order is simply a recommendation, something that says you better keep away or you'll be in trouble, which gave him plenty of room to keep following me, because only a few days after the restraining order was placed, he followed me down a street in town, and as soon as we were out of eyesight of other people, he sprinted at me. I screamed and called the cops. I saw the look on his face. He was crazed. He seemed angry. He ran at me until he saw that I was on my phone. Then he ran the other way. What's even stranger is when the police confronted him about breaking his restraining order, he straight up admitted that he had followed me that day. So they took him in, and he spent some time in jail. If I never noticed him following me that day, I wouldn't have been able to scare him off with a police phone call. And I can't help but wonder what he had planned. I'd never seen someone so scarily angry in my life. What really horrifies me is that he apparently had a lot of personal information on me. He admitted to the police all he knew. They even searched his house after he confessed that, and they basically found my life story. Every single thing about me, my childhood, my parents, my siblings. So it really was true that he had been watching me for a very long time. Just because we're at the top of the food chain doesn't mean we aren't hunted anymore. It doesn't mean we're safe, because sometimes people hunt other people. There are always new serial killers from time to time, psychopaths ready to find new prey. And luckily for them, it can be pretty easy, because careless people use Twitter, Facebook, and other sites to boast about their lives, to publicize their personal information. It's almost like they're begging to be killed. And if that's you, you might want to rethink your social media accounts before it's too late. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to send us your lockdown and janitor scary stories soon at deathbyfear.com. If you like what we do here, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/darknessprevails. You can get a shout out, you can unlock dozens of bonus episodes, and get exclusive merchandise. Speaking of which, A huge thanks goes out to some very special people, my newest patrons. They are Kyle Warwick Matthew, Ryan Haggett, Laura Poston, Benjamin Robert Miller, Abraham Rojo Salazar, Janieli Lapitan, Rosie Quinn, Brandon Foilis, Mr. Lonely Dark, and Kim Watkin. Thank you all so much. It truly is you that's keeping this channel alive. Thank you.